On tonight's show, we have community medicine Dr. Eric Griggs and infectious disease Dr. MarkAlain Dery. And now for your host, KoolKard. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 112 of the Kickin' It with KoolKard show. Last week, I had LA the Stylist on episode 111. It is now streaming on YouTube, and also it is streaming on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts. So you can go over there for your listening pleasures. All of her links are down in the description, so you guys make sure you check her out. Tonight, I have some doctors on the show. We're going to be talking about, COVID, HIV, vaccines, all that type of stuff. Just to bring you guys some value, put you up on what's going on with this whole epidemic, COVID-19. And it's going to be good. So, yes, I have Dr. Eric Griggs. He is a community medicine and health doctor. And then I also have infectious disease. Let me get my wording right. Infectious disease and epidemiologist, Dr. MarkAlain Dery. So without further ado, let me bring them in and we're going to get this show going. We're not going to waste any time on this. Let's go. Well, welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much for having us.
Oh, no, without a doubt, I had to have you on here. Hey, real quick, though, I do like to start each show with a prayer. Is anybody against that? No. Okay, cool. Let me do my prayer, and then we're going to get going. Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus, we just thank you for bringing us here tonight, just joining us in fellowship, Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus, to just speak eloquently about what's going on out here in the world of medicine and in the world of COVID. Lord Jesus, we just thank you for just allowing us to wake up, have clothes on our back, food on our table, Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus, life and love. We just thank you, Lord. We give you all the victory, all the glory, all the love, all the praise. In your name we pray. Amen. Yes, gentlemen. So listen, I know you guys are used to, getting on Zoom and you're talking medicine and you're talking COVID, you're talking all this medical stuff, right? But I don't want to start there with you guys. I want to start with this animation cartoon series that you guys have going on with your podcast, bringing light to a lot of things that people have no idea about. And the first question is, I want you to expound on it. First and foremost, I want you to brag about yourself because I want you to tell everybody what you do, your accolades and all that. And then we're going to get into the podcast. But I do have a question leading off of why you guys chose to take that route as opposed to publishing articles. And not saying that you don't do that, but the whole cartoon series thing, like I think it's like very cool. And I've never seen doctors take that route. I haven't. So... yeah. So,
first of all, thanks for having us. Real quick, you already said everything, dude. Dr. Eric Griggs, a community medicine doctor. This is my colleague, Dr. MarkAlain Dery. I'll let him introduce himself. I'm just going to be real quick and segue into it. We've been throwing alley-oops to each other as far as COVID goes since March 13th.
Okay.
If not right before we did it, we started a tour. We were going around being Dr. Chicken Littles, telling people that the sky was about all, and for the most part, they didn't. So we've taken every approach possible to try to educate people and reach the masses. And I'll let MarkAlain take it from there. His first name is MarkAlain, by the way. So yeah.
Okay. So as Doc Griggs was saying, we've been doing radio and media together in the local New Orleans region for many years. And as you'll see, as the program continues, you'll see what those many years have done. Most people think that it's brought us together and brought us in a good way. I think that largely it's fried our brains, especially over the course of the last 2 years. But like Doc Griggs says, we started the pandemic with people asking us questions that if they took a hairdryer and they put it up their nose, would that kill COVID? It was like, that was some real stuff. And so we realized early on that misinformation was going to be a thing. Like, it just occurred to us, but we need to get on top of misinformation. And so I was like, well, Eric, what do we do best? We talk. So let's start a
Speak for yourself.
podcast, right? Yeah, let's start a podcast. This podcast has since grown significantly with 80,000 daily listeners picked up by Pacifica Network. It's a 10-minute daily podcast that looks at COVID through the lens of social, economic, and racial justice. So that podcast, that's called Noise Filter. And
Oh,
that
by
we're
the
on
way,
our.
since you're allowing us to toot our own horn and brag, tell them what we were nominated for last year, and we didn't came out of the blue.
We made the short list down to 5 for the best health podcasts on the internet through the People's Choice.
Oh,
right,
wow.
yeah, People's Choice. I think it was I think it may have been international, but maybe.
It
Yeah, I think it's international. Yeah. So there was the podcast element, and then that just we're on episode 450 or 60 in terms of number of episodes that have been dropped. But at the same time, because we really like to talk and really like to look at each other, we started a daily Facebook/YouTube stream that went probably a good year and 10 months, maybe I would say a year and a half. And then Delta brought it to a close because all of a sudden the Delta situation here in New Orleans was really, really terrible. I'm still, obviously, I'm a practice infectious disease doctor, and I could not be in the hospitals and the COVID wards and still prep for our daily show. It was a 1-hour show. We have now zoomed that show as a result of Omicron. It's now Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, and you can find it under the Dr. MarkAlain Facebook web link or the Noise Filter Show YouTube channel.
Exactly. And listen, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to go into this. We're going to come back. And I got a question for Dr. Dery regarding this racial injustice in medicine. It's specifically for him because I need an answer from him. But yeah, let's go and let's watch this this cartoon on clinical trials, and we'll get back to that. Let's get into it.
We'll never get to the gig on time now. I'll be able to play the bass tonight, right?
Sure, bud. I'll grab a bandage.
Irma Thomas? The Soul Queen of New Orleans?
That's me. I'll get you to the gig with a little detour. Hop in.
You're gonna need a wrist splint, antibiotic ointment, a bandage for the cut, ibuprofen, and a tetanus vaccine.
You know what all those things have in common?
They were developed in clinical trials. I know all about those. I personally led clinical trials for over a decade.
Many folks don't know what clinical trials are or how they work.
There's nothing secretive about them. There's about 300,000 trials going on every year.
We want people to know about them. What's happening?
Take it away, Doc Griggs.
My man Doc Dery's having some issues. His wrist's all floppy like a soaking wet tissue. His head is pounding and it's got a big gap. Sorry about that, bud. I feel like in phase 1 is just a couple of folks. If everything's safe, then we widen the scope. The clinical trial moves on to phase 2. Lots more people and effects to review. In phase 3, there's a bigger collective. Gotta make sure that the treatment's effective. A stamp of approval means we're on to phase 4. Checking for effects when you walk out the door. Now here's your new treatment. It's proven and safe.
And I can rock out on my super cool bass. Yeah.
Hold up. We need to address the elephant in the room. I'm grateful for these medical discoveries, but this country has a dark history of people like me being mistreated by the medical community.
Sadly, you're right. Black and brown people were abused and lied to by the scientists and the doctors who took an oath to protect them.
It's little wonder that there's suspicion and mistrust around clinical trials and new medications within communities of color.
Absolutely, Miss Irma. And it's because of that history that we have protections in place, ensuring that trials are ethical and safe for all participants.
And why public health professionals, scientists, and doctors leading clinical trials are more diverse than ever.
That is reassuring. I want the best medical care for my grandkids to live long, healthy lives, but they need to trust that doctors will treat them fairly and with respect.
There's work to be done earning the trust of Black and brown people, but changes like these are moving us in the right direction.
Thanks, Miss Irma. This journey was really important. And addressing the elephant in the room made him a lot less scary.
Indeed. And now let's get you to that gig on time.
I love it. I love it. Now, you guys, Dr. Dery, I got this question for you. Coming off of that racial injustice in medicine, it's lingering. So you have a lot of people of my color, of Dr. Griggs' color, who are running from the vaccines. They're running from the, what is it, mRNA? Is that what it's called? Mm-hmm. Right? So
yes.
For you, when you're in a room full of people that don't look like us, how is that being perceived when you're talking about the racial injustice in medicine and how it's affecting us and how we're running from these vaccines and pretty much running from protecting ourselves?
Well, I mean, so it's a great question. I hadn't thought about it from the last part that you just added. I think that one is that we live in New Orleans and this is a bubble. Like we literally are a blue in an ocean of red that surrounds us. So in that dot, I think there are a lot of people who react and recognize what the message is saying through that animation. I think we, you got Doc Griggs who's rapping, who was able to cut that in 2 takes, which was amazing. Having the amazing Miss Irma Thomas, Grammy Award winning singer sitting right next to him as he got up and just looked at that rap for the time and just rapped it in 2 takes. You have me kind of goofing, playing my upright bass. Doc Griggs are active musicians here in New Orleans.
Okay. And
all of a sudden there's that stop, hard shift. And everybody who's seen that has agreed that is really, it's the right place. It's the right thing that we should be doing. I think obviously during the pandemic, there's been a huge cultural shift. Thank goodness. It has long overdue. Far away from ever getting to where we really, really need to be. Hopefully we get there sooner than later. But I think there was this cultural shift, and I think people look at video and recognize that this cultural shift is happening right now, and we all really need to be on board for it. And so as a physician, I am, part of that movement that is helping other doctors recognize what our past has been, and especially in infectious disease. As an infectious disease doctor, I can't but live Tuskegee, and I can't help but live. There's multiple Tuskegees that people just don't know about that I'm actually currently a book about.
Wow.
Is trying to uncover all of the Tuskegees that have happened beyond what was known from 1905 to 1972. They've happened in prisons. They've happened in different parts of the world, and they've always involved black and brown bodies. And I think that American physicians who have done this sort of, and who have, I call it, is biomedical torture. That history needs to be known. It needs to be shared with other physicians and students. But what it really does speak to is the structural racism that we have in our society. And we're still seeing it today. Just today, as we are seeing these conservative Republican senators making these ridiculous comments about the fact that it's time for us to put a black female as a Supreme Court justice on the, and we're seeing some of these responses that we're getting are just, it's just unbelievable. And for us to think, and when people say, well, we're in a post-racist society, you look at stuff like this and say, no, this is just another iteration of what was 100 years ago, which was another iteration of what it was 100 years before that. So until we really get to the root of the issue, we're going to still be living in this situation. And so why the doctors did it and why the nurses did it, they were stuck in a system where I think in order for them to succeed and move forward, there's a sense of other is happening, which is terrible. And that's essentially what I'm writing in my book, is that there was a and there still is to this day, a 2-tiered, a 3-tier class system that exists that allows those that are on top to other those that are beneath them, that allow them to do these atrocious things. And I think that's real truth of what's happening. And it pains me to say this, and it hurts. Again, I wasn't here, my family wasn't here, but that doesn't make anything. I'm still a white male physician in our society, and I think that it's time for, as physicians, that we recognize these things, talk about in open forums like this, because unless we do, we are not going to get beyond this. And I will say this before I turn it over to Doc Griggs, because Eric's commentary is brilliant here, but I've been kicked off a number of medical stages because I've been talking about this.
Wow.
I get asked to speak about it, and then they just cut my mic, or they'll be like, "Oh, well, it looks like you've gone beyond." I'm like, "I've only been talking for 20 minutes. It's an hour later." So I keep them as notches on my belt.
Yeah.
When I have been removed off of stages when I do give these sorts of lectures. But I do want to turn it over to Eric, because I think Eric really needs to be the one talking about this, not me.
Okay.
No. You've done the history. What I want to make clear here is, Card, I think there's something that kind of, I don't want it to go over everyone's head.
Come over left a little bit. You're coming out the screen. There we go.
Nurse Rivers. Her name is Eunice Verdell Rivers Laurie.
Okay.
She was the nurse. She was an African American nurse that coordinated. She's from Alabama. That coordinated the study. It was an African American nurse at the time that helped coordinate and put together the study, and that's what Dr. Dery, MarkAlain, is talking about, is the fact that, the pressures at the time. She was born in 1899 or 1900, something like that.
I think a little bit earlier than that. And of course, she came from a family of, sharecroppers, a large family. I mean, it's the story of Black Southern America at the beginning of Jim Crow America.
All right. Those vaccines. So the last time we met on here, Dr. Griggs, it was smack dab in the middle of COVID. Vaccines had not been approved yet. What's your take on it now? Are the vaccines being effective? How are you guys, I know you're doing these videos, right? And we're trying to get our people to get out there and get vaccinated. We've talked about where that stems from. But what is it going to take? And then also I want to know, what's the percentage of vaccinated versus unvaccinated in the state of Louisiana as well? So touch on all that.
My numbers, the expert here is the epidemiologist, is Dr. Dery.
Okay.
I'll just start off. The answer to your first question is, are the vaccines effective? Absolutely, 1,000% yes. They are. I'd have some more colorful words that would be more emphatic. Absolutely. I'm going to give you a very sober. I know we've been smiling a lot. Something that MarkAlain brought to my attention in December. December 1st was World Health Day. Mm-hmm. We take it very seriously. We honor the face. We made strides in the last years since HIV has hit our. We made a lot of. We know about U equals U. About NPEP, the whole nine. Now, in that 40 years, we lost, MarkAlain, correct me if I lowball, about 70,000 people. 750,000 people have died in, 750,000 people died in states from HIV in 40 years. MarkAlain, how many people have died?
900,000 people.
22 months.
In less than 2 years, we've lost more people in the U.S. We've lost more Americans in the U.S. than we have with HIV. Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, Eric, real quickly, the similarities are very similar. Think about, for those of us who were there in the days of HIV, you had the same thing where you had the government that just completely just ignored what was happening with HIV. Why? Because it was happening to people who are homosexual. It was happening to people who are HIV They were heroin users. There was a large Haitian community in the U.S. There still is. But it wasn't until hemophiliacs, those are the 4 H's of HIV, once it affected a population that then the incredibly racist, America, and such discrimination against who? Our fellow brothers and sisters. So they were gay, big deal. So they were HIV, they were heroin users. Big deal. We can help them, so that they were from Haiti. So they look different than whatever. It's unbelievable. But what they did is they ignored HIV. And because it happened to populations that didn't look, talk, or relate with them or whatever.
Hey, I want to ask you one thing though. With the vaccine, if you're vaccinated, let me ask you this: Has there been any deaths with COVID with somebody that's vaccinated?
Yes.
Yes,
okay.
I took care of people. I took care of people who have died of COVID who were vaccinated. But let me say this, and I think it's
MarkAlain, hold on. Please define for him when you ask him that, card. Vaccinated. What do you mean? You mean?
Well, during Delta, Eric, remember I was seeing a lot of death with Delta, right? Uh-huh. So there was the booster was not, or the so-called booster. What Doc Griggs was getting to was that I really consider fully vaccinated as being 3 vaccines and not referring to that 3rd dose as a booster. We have lots of 3-dose vaccines. MMR is a 3-dose vaccine. The HPV is a 3-dose vaccine. Hepatitis B is a 3-dose vaccine. But what I want everybody to recognize is this. And Doc Griggs was getting to it, and I think maybe we got cut. But think of the vaccine as being like a seatbelt, okay? That's all it is. It is nothing but a medical seatbelt. So what do I mean by that? When you put a seatbelt on, does that seatbelt prevent you from getting in a car accident? No, of course it doesn't. Nobody would ever think that a seatbelt is going to prevent a car accident. What it does do, however, is that it does limit the severity of injuries if you do get in a car accident. And that's what the vaccines do. The vaccines, and that's what Eric was trying to say, the vaccines don't necessarily prevent infection, right? But what they do is prevent the severity of illness. So can somebody die in a car accident who's wearing a seatbelt? Of course they can. Absolutely. But is it less likely for them to do it? Yes. The people who I saw who passed who were vaccinated, especially during Delta, one, you had a virus that was much more virulent. In other words, the severity of disease was much more. But then also these were people who were significantly elderly who had multiple comorbidities. In other words, they had multiple other medical problems. So they were vulnerable to begin with. But it's just like seatbelts. You would never get in a car and not put on a seatbelt. And that's the same way we need to think about these vaccines. Doc, Eric Griggs?
No,
Doc?
you said it. I mean, I love it when he goes to the seatbelt analogy.
Oh, that was a great.
Yeah. Are people going to have accidents? Yeah, probably. But will less people die if they're wearing their seatbelt? Absolutely. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. The purpose of a vaccine is to prevent people from dying and overloading the hospital system. Now, there is a misconception in our country, and if you have time, I'd love for MarkAlain to tell you his experience. One thing, when the numbers go up, I hit the streets because everyone in the streets calls me, and they want education, and then they want to be talked through. I have to remind them how to take care of themselves if they have the flu, if they have any other illness, and it's a constant thing. And then I try to make sure people have their supply of testing, of tests, and where to go to get testing. And for masks, Dr. Dery, we meet in the middle at some point, and he goes deep into the hospital. He goes in, puts on the white coat, takes care of patients whenever things surge. So it gets a little hairy and complicated. But there is a misconception in our country, and this is the mis and disinformation, that there's a hospital bed. There are 335 million hospital beds for every American, and the hospitals aren't set up that way.
Right.
So it's very easy to overwhelm the system, which is why, and I'm not going to rabbit hole it, but which is why as things get more infectious, it's a problem. And more people are unvaccinated, it's a problem. Because the number of people that are unvaccinated, we know at a minimum 75 million people are unvaccinated. And if I'm not mistaken, last I checked, there aren't 75 million beds. And if there are, if they take up that 75 million, what are the other 260 million of us supposed to do?
Right. People having babies, broken hips, heart attacks, all the things, right? And so it's such a good point that Doc Griggs is bringing up, is that we are seeing that those people who are unvaccinated are they are taking up a lot of the hospital beds. And I do want to say this. I think it's important to say this. The last time I was on service, which was a couple of weeks ago, and I was working the COVID wards at the peak of the Omicron peak here in New Orleans. My colleagues are tired. Like I work in the hospitals when I need to, when I'm being called on. Usually it's every couple of weeks. Other than that, I'm doing a lot of communication and media with Eric or whatever. But then when I go back to the hospital and I look at my brave brothers and sisters who are there every single day, and those nurses who work in the COVID units, they're wearing respirators and these what is it, the Tyvek suits?
Tyvek.
Yeah, Tyvek suits they're hot inside, they're sweating inside. These nurses are literally feeding, cleaning up after you, and in all the ways that they clean up after another. They're bathing you, and they're also making sure that your medications. These nurses are the true heroes. And I say women because it's mostly women, but not exclusively. But these people are amazing. They are the heroes. But I'm looking at my colleagues. They're getting tired. Like, I see their notes. Their notes are not as dynamic as they used to be. There is a fatigue after years, because we have a tool that is so effective. And the fact that we see, it's not even funny how many people who are in the hospital as a result of coronavirus. It is exclusively unvaccinated. And as physicians and as healthcare workers, we really do practice that. Eric, remind me, is an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure?
Pound of cure.
Right. It is so important to recognize that prevention is so important, and yet what we have is a lot of pound of cure, and that pound, just like weight, adds up after a long time, and it starts to tire people out. And what we are going to probably start seeing is an exodus out of the healthcare field, and that's going to be a real tragedy that comes along with the many other tragedies that we've seen with COVID.
So what do you think is going to be done, like, moving forward, to try to force people to get vaccinated? Because they've gone to the
that ain't gonna happen.
It's just not gonna happen, huh?
I was hopeful that the airlines would do it. If the airlines had mandated vaccinations, I think that we would probably see more. That would have been the thing that would have really moved people.
Yeah.
But I think that they didn't do it. So I think at this point it has become so highly politicized. You have, you had the previous president who, did a good thing with Operation Warp Speed, brought us two really, really amazing vaccines, one in particular, Moderna. But whenever he brings it up in his so-called rallies or live events, it gets booed. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, the thing that he came up with.
He gets booed. Wow.
Right, and he gets booed. And if that's where people are at right now, like I say, like I've long stopped trying to, and when you look at people who are in areas of the country that voted for the previous president, right, number 45, those are the areas that have the lowest rates of vaccinations. What are you going to do? It's become a political issue. Yeah. It's become an issue that's beyond what I think any public health practitioner would have ever considered. And it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't have to make sense. But this is the situation we're in right now. Doc, and what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, you're just spot on. I mean, it's frustrating.
So is it here to stay?
Coronavirus?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's like the flu now.
It's exactly. No. You have no idea. You are 100% correct. So in 1918, we had the big, huge flu pandemic, right? That killed upwards to 100 million people around the globe, right? And so we, to this day, if you get a flu vaccine or if you get the flu itself, you are getting a remnant of that 1918. In fact, it's still named the nomenclature, scientific nomenclature, H1N1. It's still the same. So we are still living in the shadow of 1918. And I think that for future generations, many generations to come, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations, defined at 20 years a generation, will have COVID-19 in their lives, and we will have some booster vaccines. And you can find that animation number 2 under Noise Filter show /watch. You'll find Eric and I, Doc Griggs and I, talking about how variants emerge and why we need new vaccines. And I think we're going to be seeing some combination of an influenza vaccine with a COVID vaccine, and they'll just be updated annually.
So basically annually, we're probably going to have to get the shot. Is that
just like with flu?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we're living through the early phases of discovery. I mean, it's like we're forced to take a science class that we didn't sign up for, but no matter what, we can't leave class until it's over.
Yeah.
What about the teacher, Miss COVID, hates you.
What about masks though? What about wearing masks? Are masks effective, and will we always have to wear masks?
Yes. Do you know why Asian cultures wear masks? Do you know where that came from?
No.
1918.
Okay.
So the masking culture that occurred in Asia really ramped up after 1918, and it has become part of the culture in Asia that you don't want to spread your viral, illness, your cold, your upper respiratory infection to other people. Right. I think we'll be wearing masks. I just was looking, I just got a request for some pictures for some stuff. And I was looking at some old pictures to send to the journalist who's doing a story on some stuff I'm working on. And I was looking at myself in a very, very small room with many other people. And then I was like, wow, I will never do that again. And if I have to be in a small room with other people, I will definitely be masked. So I'm looking at pictures that were taken 6 years ago saying, I don't think I would do that right now. And if I did, I will definitely wear masks. I'm a musician. I play live on stages here in New Orleans. I mask up when I play live. Wherever I go, I double mask. I wear a KN95 or an N95 mask, and I put a surgical mask or a cloth mask over it just so that it keeps the integrity of that KN95 intact so it doesn't soil. I know that Doc Griggs, I don't want to speak for Doc Griggs, but I know he does the same as well. I think that we'll be masking for a while to come. I feel comfortable being outdoors without a mask. I keep a distance from people.
Right.
But I think we will start to see more and more things being done outdoors, eating, live events, that sort of stuff. And one of the things that I saw, which I thought was really interesting, and Eric, I would love to hear your take on it because it's so uniquely New Orleans. One of the things in New Orleans that we have are something called go drinks. You could just walk into a bar, grab an alcoholic beverage, and just walk out on the street and just drink away. In fact, you could just have a bottle and drink. But we forget when we're in New Orleans, you can't do that in Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York City. You can't just walk out with your drink, which I do all the time.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? So we're starting to see in different cities that actually enacted go drinks to help keep bars alive. They're starting. Politicians are starting to claw that back, and the restaurant industries are like, no. We want to continue with our go drinks. And you know what? I say yes. Having beverages outdoors, I think, is also going to be a good thing. But these are the sorts of things that we need to understand. And of course, I'm being tongue-in-cheek when it comes to alcohol beverages. But the point that I'm making is that being outdoors and focusing on outdoor activity while we're still in this COVID conundrum is important. Eric, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think you're absolutely you're spot on. The original question he asked, he was talking about masking. If you can imagine back in the first pandemic, of 1918, they didn't even know what a virus was then. They just knew that if the three of us were standing here talking to each other, one of us was going to die. So I need to keep my breath to myself, and I don't want to breathe yours. So we'll just and let's just say that in other countries they took it very seriously, and it was out of respect, and they saw that it worked. Masking at the end of the day, with or without a vaccine, masking worked. And it works in this instance. It did, but we had so many variations and iterations and the whole nine. We still know, consistently that keep your hands and your funky, nasty breath to yourself will keep everybody alive. Yes.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me? Well, first and foremost, I want to say I'm very familiar with the grenade. Walking around with that grenade, I've been on my back in the street with that grenade.
Yeah. That's basically wood grain alcohol and sugar. So you're gonna have the next morning you're gonna wake up with a headache. I assure you of that.
Yeah, I did.
Singing like Kermit the Frog, talking about it's not easy being green. Yeah.
So listen, I just want to be clear though. You mean to tell me for years on end, we're going to be walking around with a mask? Because I'm sick of a mask. I wear a mask, but I'm sick of it.
Get over it.
Yeah,
wear the mask.
As my very, very close friend and colleague will say, shut up and just wear the mask. But I would not say that to you. I would let Eric, who will say that. No, in all honesty, I think that wearing a mask is the ultimate sign of courtesy, not only when you're sick, but just protecting yourself and protecting your family. It is one of the animations that we're working on right now, and would love to share it with you when it's done. It's probably a couple weeks away. It's for the 100 Black Men of America. And we're looking at why math, and it's our first children's animation. So it is geared for children. And what we wrote out was a script and a great song that's super catchy. It's still stuck in my head after all these months. It's Eric singing right now. But the whole point is showing how the mask protects you from outside viruses coming in and protects others by blocking the virus from getting out of your mouth if you are infected.
Your funky, nasty, green, virus-infested breath to yourself.
We're going to be wearing masks for a while.
Tell me this. Is Mardi Gras still a thing? Is it happening? And if it is, absolutely. Why? Why?
Huge difference. Eric, go ahead. I'll let you start, and I'll pick up where you...
Yeah, you set me up for that one.
And Eric, aren't you friends with the mayor? You need to have a discussion.
There are discussions had, but here's the thing. Let me speak first to New Orleans. And MarkAlain, I'm going to pull the epidemiologist back out. We're doing very well. Our numbers relative to the rest of the state, relative to a lot of places in the country, are excellent, considering where we were with Omicron. If you'll notice the pattern of what happens, if we'll take the time to notice trends with this virus, it attacks the outer edges of the country. It attacks our ports. We hear about New York. We hear about the Northeast. We'll hear about Florida. We'll hear about us down here in the Gulf of Mexico. You'll hear about California on the edges because they're ports, right? They're the big ports, right? And then things move inward. As a consequence of that, with this virus, you've noticed the virus go up and down, the peaks and valleys. What's happened is we get it first. And because of that, here in New Orleans, we've learned and we quickly adapt to when there's a surge. All we have to do is say the virus is surging, and much to a lot of our chagrin, we will go back and do what's right. So Mardi Gras wouldn't be taking place had the virus not already swept through here. Our numbers went down, and can we do it safely? We don't know, but we're going to try.
Okay.
We economically, it's a boon to our city. I can't tell you, I mean, millions upon millions of dollars. But the other thing is the rules here. It's like, okay, if you want to have nice things and have your friends over, you need to make sure your friends know the rules of the house.
Yeah.
Which is why there are strict mask mandates, where there are vaccine credentials to get into places. And this is when I'll hand it over to MarkAlain and let the epidemiologists come in. I mean, our fingers are crossed. We're knocking on all kinds of wood. Because it's a scary situation, because the numbers could be down, and then we have everyone come in and they can go up, or we could have everyone follow the rules and do the best that we can to keep our numbers down so it doesn't turn into a super spreader.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, Eric said everything kind of right on the money there. I think that there's two things. One is that our numbers are looking good, and we knew that our numbers were going to be good because Omicron is a virus that burns brightly. Like I usually say, it's a lives fast, die young virus. We didn't know about it. I first heard about Omicron as I was pulling up my plate and pulling out a glass of wine and getting ready to sit down and eat on Thanksgiving Day. That's when I felt my buzz in my phone before I took my first bite. I looked at my phone and I'm like, great. We have a new variant, and now here we are 2 months later, dealing with a massive outbreak. But our outbreak actually happened very, very early for all the reasons that Doc Griggs said. But more importantly than that is that we have a Mardi Gras-like event on Halloween, in and around the Halloween time. New Orleans did kind of a quasi-experiment. The cases were very low. There was no Omicron. It was between Delta and Omicron. Cases were exceedingly low, and we allowed one of the Mardi Gras crews, called the Crew of Boo, have their Halloween parade. And what we found was that there was an extraordinary low amount of COVID circulating in the community. We knew that because of the numbers, but there was very, very little transmission that occurred because everything occurred outdoors. Okay. Now, it was a one-night event. Now, Mardi Gras is very different. Mardi Gras happens over the course of a month. There's a lot of indoor events, Mardi Gras balls, that sort of stuff. Is there going to be transmission of COVID? Yes, there is. There's no question about it. Can you mitigate it? Yes. Are people hopefully going to show up to these balls boosted and masked? Hopefully, yes. Like Doc Griggs was saying, these are the rules of the house. Please play by the rules of the house. Yeah. And lastly, more importantly, we know that the virus does not replicate in the lungs. In other words, it's not as severe as previous iterations. Like if you were fully vaccinated and got infected with Delta, that could be a particular problem, but we're not seeing that same level of severity with Omicron. The last thing is, I think that given those situations, I think that it is fair to allow Mardi Gras to happen, because you got to give people a release valve. And if you don't allow for a release valve to happen, I think that's when things can get really, really bad. So we're in the best COVID situation that we could be in. Our Omicron is behind us. We don't see anything ahead of us. All of our numbers are heading into the right direction. We all know numbers are going to go up, hopefully a little bit, after Mardi Gras, which is March 1st. We know that all of February is going to be nothing but parades and balls, but that's just the way it is. So collectively, we cross our fingers. We allow that release valve to happen, and then we take a big step back, and then it's going to be like people like myself and Eric who then respond if there are these big upticks. We are on the front line, and Eric and I have been on the front line since, I think our first broadcast about COVID was in February of 2020.
It was February.
Okay.
When I first started telling him, I'm like, hey, dude, there's something circulating that I need to tell you about. And he was like looking at me the whole time and just like unbelievable. Like, no.
You've been drinking too many of them Go drinks.
And so I think that it is important for Mardi Gras to happen. Last year, there's no way you would have had me ever say that Mardi Gras should happen. But you know what? French Quarter Fest is going to happen, and then the week after, there's going to be 2 weekends of Jazz Fest. Again, all outdoors. Is there going to be some transmission of COVID? Of course there is, but at least there's like a risk mitigation. We know what the risks are. We know now. Don't wash your groceries. Don't wash your mail. Of course, wash your hands, because that's just the right thing to do. But hands do not, transmit COVID. It's all transmitted through the air. So how can you protect yourself besides being boosted? It's wearing masks. So yes, masks are going to be important for time to come.
Omicron, it's weakening, right? With these variant, well, I don't want to say it's weakening, but you're saying it's weaker than the Delta variant. With these new variants, how do these variants come about? And do you think that as they come about, like other ones that come about, are they going to be weaker? Is it weakening out? Is it thinning out? Or?
The short answer is no. I'm running a little short on answers, on words and time
and hair.
Yeah, well, that's not new. That's not new. See, if you diffuse it and act and just go on, he does less of it. So just bear with me. Just learn. Just humor him. So here's the deal. The short answer is that's not true. Do viruses tend to quote unquote, I won't call it weaken, because if you call it, even if they become less lethal and more contagious over time, considering the fact that this is COVID, the hospitals still get overwhelmed by the number of people. So there's no such thing as weakening. It's like saying someone's more left-handed than they are right-handed. Is death the ultimate wrong and the ultimate lethal end? Yes, but and that's considering if things were going to go on in a linear fashion. It's not. Now we've got branches and multiple variants. Viruses mutate. That's what they do. So, yeah, I'm going to hand it over to MarkAlain.
Yeah. Bring it over here, baby. Yeah, Bring it over here.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to have to defer.
Yeah. All right. So the question that you asked is incredibly important, and it's going to take me about a minute or two to so just stick with me and I'll explain. All right. Viruses typically either become more infectious or they become more virulent. They become more severe in disease. Lethal. So as they change, they usually take one track or they take another. This is the first virus we've ever seen that's taken both tracks, right? Like Eric says, that what Omicron has done largely has, what do you say, Eric? It's read the lesson, or it's read.
It understood the assignment.
Right. It's understood the assignment, because this has been shocking for us. You had the Wuhan. So let me just say this: the Omicron variant that we see right now has the same lethality or virulence that the strain that emerged out of Wuhan has. The same lethality. But 2 years ago, you didn't see people walking down the street saying, just go ahead and give me COVID and let me get it over with. They were like indoors, right? Yeah. Whereas now with Omicron, they're like, go ahead, give it to me, I'm fine. Where it's the same lethality.
And they're surprised when they're waking up dead. No, I have a shot. They're waking up dead and shot.
So they're waking up dead. Shot. All right. I'm trying to, how can I do this? All right. Anyway, so when the strain that emerged out of Wuhan, we refer to that as the wild type. That wild type strain, then we had alpha. It was much more lethal and was much more infectious. Okay. After that, we had the beta, we had the gamma, then we had the delta, which was far more infectious and incredibly lethal. And then you had after that the lambda and the mu that were even more so. But then boom, we hit Omicron. And this gets to your question, and this is why it's such an important question, because usually it's not in the virus's interest to kill its host. There's no reason why a virus wants to kill its host. The virus, the only job of a virus, it's just like humans. Spread your seed and move on. That is pretty much the only function of a virus. It wants to give its RNA, and then it needs to move on to the next host, and then move on to the next host, and move on to the next host. And it doesn't work when you kill your host. That's why one of the things with HIV is it kills its host after 10 years, whereas COVID kills its host after 10 days. So what happens with Omicron is that we're seeing, hopefully, fingers crossed, you see these fingers are crossed, that hopefully we're seeing a less severity, less virulence of the virus. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that the next variant will also be less virulent, and it'll start to do the things that it's supposed to do, which is either become more infectious or become more virulent, but not do the both, not do the same. So this is only one. This is one. You need three to be a trend, right? You got 1 point in space, you have 2 points in space, that's a line, and 3 points in space, that's a trend. So we're still at the first point in space. So we need to see what's going to happen next. But these variants emerge from either immunocompromised people or they emerge from animal reservoirs. And this is why COVID is going to be with us for many years.
In unvaccinated countries and people and blah, blah,
and
blah, blah,
unvaccinated, blah. Right. And until this brings up another great talking point that Doc Griggs and I talk about all the time. Thank you for doing that. Is that until we vaccinate the globe, we will continue to be in this COVID conundrum that we're in, because you cannot just vaccinate the rich countries and then just assume that the countries for whom, by the way, where these tests were made, right? Where the testing for these vaccines were done, right? You should at least have the social consciousness to realize, oh, I tested in Cameroon. I should go back and vaccinate the rest of Cameroon. Cameroon right now has a vaccination rate of 2.5%.
Oh my
right?
God.
So until you vaccinate the globe, until we remove the intellectual property, you know who paid for the Moderna vaccine? The American taxpayers. You know what the American government did? Turned around and just sold it to Moderna without any rights, without saying, okay, we're selling it to you. You can charge us an arm and a leg. You can recoup. You can make billions on this, but you also need to remove the intellectual property so that it can be distributed throughout the globe. And countries like Thailand, India, and Brazil, right? Some of the best biotech countries around the world could have produced and manufactured this vaccine. They did not, because as Americans, we refuse to remove the intellectual property on that vaccine that we collectively paid for as taxpayers, and therefore we will continue to be in this COVID conundrum until we vaccinate the globe. Eric? Sorry.
Wait, hold on, wait. So that the viewers are clear, when you say intellectual property, what are you speaking of?
The intellectual property of the mRNA vaccine.
Got you.
That was developed at the National Institutes for Health. In fact, Kizzmekia Corbett. Do you know the story of Kizzmekia Corbett?
No, I don't.
Oh, dude, you got to look at the person who invented the vaccine. Her name is Kizzy Corbett, Kizzzy, last name Corbett, Dr. Corbett, Corbett. She was 27 years old. She walked out. She just completed her PhD in immunology. She got her job at the NIH, her first job, a postgraduate, NIH. She walks in. She's a vaccinologist, immunologist, and she sees the technology the NIH is doing. She's like, no. What you guys are doing are crazy. Let me work on something new. And she's the one that started working on not only mRNA vaccines, but mRNA vaccines in coronaviruses for the common cold. And so she had the recipe ready when COVID-19 happened. And so the story of Kizzmekia Corbett, please look her up.
Okay, I'll check her out.
Eric, I mean, she grew up in Eric's home. She grew up in your home state, right, Eric? Like not too far away from you? Or
Yeah, North Carolina. Yeah.
Wow.
And now, of course, Harvard recruited her, and so now she's a immunologist at Harvard. But what's the story, Eric? It was the story was her third grade teacher called her parents up and was like, you have a very, very, very intelligent daughter. And that was the first time her parents were like, so that's when they started putting her in science camps and all that stuff. Kizzmekia Corbett is the hero. And I wish more people knew about her. And one of our dreams is to make an animation starring Kizzmekia Corbett.
Yeah. With her.
Check her out. Hey, I got Mythbuster, because I hear people say this, and I don't believe it's true. But if you catch COVID once, you can't catch it twice.
Myth.
I know.
We just busted it.
Busted.
Yeah.
Boom.
Thank you.
Shattered.
Thank you. Now, this mRNA, I hear a lot of people talking down on it. Specifically, people of color. They're saying mRNA, you can do all types of crazy things with it. Bring people back.
Be more specific. I'm gonna have to run soon.
Okay.
And I was just about to tell you that, but you done started it, so finish it. What you said? Tell me what they said.
No, I've just heard crazy things about the mRNA.
Tell me what crazy thing. I want to hear the crazy thing.
Like you can reproduce.
I want all the smoke.
You could reproduce brain cells. You could bring people back from the dead with this stuff.
Lies, myths,
all
lies,
this craziness,
lies.
Man.
Lies, wrong.
Listen, long story short, you have DNA, and the whole purpose of DNA is those are the instructions that a cell needs to do its job. And so the DNA lives in a nucleus. Now, when a cell needs something, it needs like an enzyme, a special something, it needs to perform a function. It goes to the DNA and it says, hey, give me what I need. But you can't take the whole DNA. That's ridiculous. So what has evolved is that you take a small portion of the DNA. So if all you need is portion X, it gives you just portion X. But it can't give you the portion X itself because It's part of the DNA. So it makes a copy of itself.
Okay.
That copy of itself is mRNA. And that copy of itself then goes to the ribosome, which in the vaccine animation that we showed, it's like a 3D printer, and it just reads it, and then boom, that's it. And you know what happens to that little piece of mRNA? It's gone like a Snapchat. It's gone. It disappears. So all the things you were saying, all mRNA is it allows, and stands for messenger. The M in mRNA stands for messenger, not misinformation. It stands for messenger, right? So it takes the information from a DNA out of the nucleus to a ribosome. The ribosome reads the code. It produces the protein. The mRNA disappears. So if you did not have mRNA in your system for whatever reason, you would have never made it out of your mother's womb. Period. End of discussion.
There you have it.
mRNA is how we exist right now. It's because of mRNA.
All right, cool. Thank you for summing that up, because I've heard so much stuff. I'm tired of hearing it. There you have it, guys. I hope you guys, everybody watching, everybody listening on the podcast, I hope that you took from this and you go and do the right thing for yourself, for your loved ones, everyone that you're around. Just do the right thing. Let's get through this thing. Gentlemen, I know you got to run. Dr. Dery, I appreciate you. Dr. Griggs, appreciate you. Thank you so much for all the information. Hey guys, Kicking It with KoolKard every Tuesday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You know where I'm at. Thank you guys. It's a blessing to have you guys on here. So much appreciated. Everybody tuning in, thank you so much. Peace. We'll see you next week. Oh, any last words? Anything you want to say?
Noisefiltershow.com is where you find our animations. And then Doc Griggs and we just asked Eric Hawkins to please be on our show.
I will.
Wednesdays, 6 o'clock Central Standard. You'll find it on my Facebook page as well as Eric's.
I will.
Yeah, I have to give a lecture tomorrow until 6:30. Maybe you can come in and y'all can get the show going. And I'll jump in as soon as I finish.
I'll be on there tomorrow.
Great.
So here's the other thing is, understand that everything that Dr. Dery just explained, you can find those explanations in the first 2 cartoons. If you go to noisefiltershow.com, look for COVID education, it explains messenger RNA. We go inside the body, it explains variants, the whole 9. MarkAlain, I'm out of words. I'm all talked up.
Hold on, Eric. You want to make animations?
Yes.
Hey, Dr. Dery, get with me so I can get the information to get in on that tomorrow. Somebody get with me, Michelle.
I will.
Somebody.
I'll get with Michelle. I'll send her all the information.
Okay, cool. I'll be there. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, we're out of here, guys. Till next week. God bless.